The Sales Proformance Show, your source of inspiration in the world of sales and business development. Here we blend cutting-edge sales strategies with personal development. You'll hear from the experts to help unlock your true potential. And now, here's your host, David Slyman.
Welcome back to the Sales Proformance Show, everybody. Today is a real special show. We have a guest with us. His name is Dan Fantasia. He's the CEO of Treeline. Now, Treeline is one of the top recruiting firms in the country for sales professionals. I love the lane, obviously, that he's in. But this show today is going to give us a real perspective from two sides. One, from the business side. If you're a business owner or if you're looking to hire talent for your business and you want to learn more about it, this is going to be the show for you. Now, if you're a sales professional and you're looking maybe for a new home or just a home in general, or sharpen up your resume, any of that good stuff, we're going to talk about that kind of from that aspect as well. So it's going to be a really great show. We're going to look at it from two sides, and we're going to be talking all about the expansion of sales growth for companies and sales growth for professionals. So Dan Fantasia, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So listen, it was great connecting with you. I'm glad to have you on the show today. And we're going to unpack a lot of stuff. But just give our listeners a little bit of background of how you've got into this profession. And we'll talk more about your company and the strategies and all that good stuff from there.
Yeah. Well, I fell into it. I think most people fall into recruiting. Actually, most people fall into sales, right? Yes. I knew nothing about the recruiting industry. I came from a sales background. I went to a recruiting firm to consider my options. Yeah. And before you know it, they said, well, hold on a second. Have you ever considered recruiting? And I said, I don't even know what recruiting is. At the time, it was 100% commission. And but I liked the company. I liked the people. I liked the culture. I liked what we were doing. And so I joined the organization, even though my friends and family thought I was nuts. And unfortunately, over the first 6 months, I struggled. I wasn't good at it. I actually was really pretty bad at it. Mostly because I was just too junior in my thought process. I couldn't take leadership and I couldn't guide or coach people on their next career move. But once I figured it out, I really started to crush it. I became the number one producer, the youngest managing partner. And unfortunately, while I loved the company, the model started to break down. And so that's when I started Treeline. I started Treeline to build, a best place to work, an organization where people can really come and build a career while feeling good about the work we do and really changing the lives of so many different individuals as we help them progress their career, both professionally as well as financially. So it's been great. It's been a great ride. It feels wonderful.
That's excellent. Yeah. And what makes you, obviously you're one of the top recruiting firms, and we've talked a little bit about this when we visited, but what makes you guys different? What makes you different over there?
Yeah. So from a business perspective, we are exclusive to sales. There are very few firms that are exclusive to sales. Now, a lot of companies said they will recruit in the sales industry, but then they also recruit admin and they recruit IT and back office and things of that nature. We only do sales and have been for 23 years, right? We have over 200,000 individuals in our database. And as a result, we've done a really good job building a strong network, helping individuals get out of college and enter the field of sales, helping them find a good opportunity so they can sustain a career and stay in the field. And over 23 years, we have access to really strong talent because of the advice that we've given to our individuals, because we've helped so many people advance their careers, whether it's through and with one of our clients or on their own. But we've helped them so much in a genuine fashion that actually has paid back multiple times, because we believe in doing what's right.
What do you, we're talking about sales professionals here, and I might go a little bit off, but what are some of the critical qualities in a sales professional? I know what I have in my mind, but ultimately when you're looking at placement or talking for somebody for the first time, what kind of qualities are you looking for to make sure that you have a good fit?
Well, I wish it was as generic as that, but a lot of it depends on the company.
Yeah.
What is the company looking for? So we need to understand their core values, the atmosphere, the organization. We need to understand the key attributes to their selling model. So if they have a transactional model as opposed to a strategic model, we need to understand that so that we can find candidates that meet the criteria, that have the same, like the same social selling skills or personality characteristics that align with your sales environment, so that when they join the organization, they can ramp up successfully, hit the ground running successfully, and ultimately, become a top producer.
Yeah.
Sales in general, I mean, there's a lot of soft characteristics, but ultimately, we would need to talk to every company to understand exactly what their model is
Yeah.
and who works best in it, including the top producers.
Great, man. So in talking on that, can you explain maybe some of the most common pitfalls that companies make when recruiting for sales professionals? I think they probably would want to know some of the things, the do's and don'ts, so to speak, of what a company should do when recruiting a sales professional.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question because you first need to understand, who you're searching for. And for many organizations, what they think is that they need to hire a salesperson,
Mhm.
and any salesperson that says they're a great salesperson will do, and they will change the trajectory of the organization. And then right after they hire them, as you and I both know, they find failure, that doesn't work out, and they hired the wrong person. Right?
Yeah,
They're selling a complex software, system, and they're hiring a person that has no experience in the field or has never called on their audience or things of that nature.
it's
And
hard.
and one of the big challenges is that they just don't have access to the talent, David. So they don't
Mhm.
have a strong structured recruitment plan to go find the talent. I mean, they need to go find talent just like a sales representative is going to find new prospects for your organization. Right? It's that critical. It's the same model, the same process. The same way your sales team sells and builds their territory, their cold calling plan, their ability to attract prospects to the organization, well, your recruiting team or your team internally needs to have the same type of process and perspective to find top sales talent. And if you don't, obviously companies can come to us, but you could do it on your own.
Yeah.
If you don't, you would come to us, and we would hold ourselves accountable to find the skill set that best fits your environment. Then we deliver those people to your organization so you can interview, qualify, and decide who's the right fit for your company.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting it on the head here, right? There's so many moving parts with a company, and I think another thing to touch on is KPIs, right? Understand what the key performance indicators are and what they're showing and where you need to improve. And ultimately, when someone does come into the system, the action items that they're going to have to take on a daily basis. And what you're saying here is, and this is where I see the streamline. There's so many things to do. If you want to do it right, get with someone like yourself so that you can unpack this thing a little bit more. And maybe they can even find out some things that they weren't thinking about. Have you ever been in that situation where you get with a client and you start unpacking things and they realize that maybe they got to tighten a few things up or get more clarity to a certain action item or a KPI or just even targets in general?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, so so when companies do come to us, many times it depends. If it's a founder-led sales organization, they're just trying to figure it out. They don't have the metrics or the process in place to find success yet, and just hiring a salesperson isn't going to cut it. If you have an existing sales organization, you understand and know who your top producers are. You know what they look like. You know what the activity metrics are for them to be successful. And so when you go to market, you need to build or use similar activity metrics around your recruiting department or team, so that you understand, and so that they're held accountable, but that you understand more data. you understand what the candidates, what companies you're going after, how many people you've talked to. Of those individuals, how many people have connected with you? How many people are showing interest? How many people are rejecting the opportunity? And so if you don't understand those metrics and you don't know how many people you need to talk to deliver one talented or top talented sales professional, then what happens to organizations is they get caught on their heels and they never find the talent they want because they're maybe posting jobs and they're getting people that apply. And ultimately, they're kind of hiring the best of the worst because they haven't really held their recruiting team to accountable metrics that will drive the behavior and activity they need to find a successful, sales representative for their team.
Yeah. And I've been on both sides of this gamut, man, where I've taken it in-house and it's like, oh, you almost feel like you're gambling to some respect. But when I've aligned myself with sales recruiting firms, and more importantly, here, I do want to preference this. I have made the mistake myself in aligning myself with a recruiting firm that was not sales specific. And I felt, and I'm not taking anything away. There's places for the admin and for CSRs and all that good stuff. But when I aligned myself with a sales recruiting firm, there was a huge difference because you know exactly what to unpack and what to look for. And then on the other side, with a candidate, you can tie those two things together. And I highly recommend it for anybody out there who's developing on the sales side to look at the recruiting side. Talking with a guy like Dan, I mean, it's just the way to go. All right, so talk to me about the remote work influence. How has you're giggling? I'm touching on something here. The remote work influence of recruiting and retention of sales reps. I'm gonna leave that with you and let you unpack it.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, so obviously COVID hit, everyone was virtual. Then we went to a stage where companies were really starting to push and they wanted people back in office, right? They were really pushing hard to get people back into the office. And now we're at a stage where if you are pushing, to get people back into the office 100% of the time, you just can't compete. And so most companies, 99% of them right now for a selling environment, they usually have some kind of hybrid in the office certain days a week, flexibility, things of that nature. And even then, what they're finding is that when you have people in the office, many times there are other people out of the office. So while you're in the office, you're still kind of working virtually. So it still becomes a challenge. So companies are offering at least a hybrid role because it's the only way to compete. And the one place that you really likely, the one demographic that could use help and it is nice to get them to the office more often than not is the entry level, early stage sellers. They need coaching. They need to absorb the message. They need to understand the positive camaraderie of a sales environment. And so while bringing them into the office or forcing them into the office every day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, still give them some flexibility, but try to bring them in because it does help that demographic learn the business, get better at what they're doing, and feel more comfortable and confident in sales itself.
Yeah. For our listeners out there who are maybe not as experienced in the sales realm and looking to get into sales, what are, I guess you're answering some of that question, but what are some of the things that they have to do in order to be successful? And I'm kind of putting you on this side of the sales professional.
Yeah, if you're a person that is looking to get into sales and you don't have any sales experience, the first thing you need to do is understand and learn your story. You need to know how to speak to your accomplishments in life. And I'm not saying necessarily career accomplishments. It is super helpful. But who are you? Again, your personality characteristics. What makes you tick? Why do you stand above the rest? if you're making a transition, we want to understand that story and then position those strengths throughout your career, throughout your life, so that people can hear the story and understand who you are and why you're so built for sales. So, for example, if you were the captain of your field hockey team or basketball team in high school, we want to see it. We want to talk about it. Why were you the captain? Were you not as athletic necessarily? Did it not was it not a natural ability, but you just worked harder than everyone else? We want to know about it. Did you go to college and same thing? Were you the captain of your team again, whatever, hockey team, baseball team? Doesn't matter. Right? Did you get a good GPA? Did you do a work study? Did you work when you were 15 years old on the pizza place? Like, why is it that you have the personality to be strong in sales? Have you experienced rejection? Have you experienced a time when you had to have grit in your life? And, you want to know about that. And so those are a lot of those things. When we talk about changing people's lives, when we talk to an individual that wants to get into sales, we have to interview every single person because we can't see it on their resume.
Yeah.
Usually the story doesn't sell itself on the resume. It's one-dimensional. We have to talk to the people, unpack that story, and then make sure that they can repeat that story back to us and talk to us about why they think they should be in sales, and not only in sales, but why should they be a top producer at one of our clients or a growing company.
Yeah, we need to clip that back, listen to that. If you're a professional new into sales and you want to get into this career, rewind that and listen to exactly what he said, because what he's talking about there is, we had a guest on, I don't think it's about 4 or 5 episodes ago. His name was Craig Can, and he was talking about being a brand. We are all brands of some sort. And you have to identify your brand, and you have to define who you are. And even though you might not have the illustrious career, you are a brand, and you got to find that. And I think you just hit it right on the head, and it reinforces what he was talking about, and obviously what you're talking about. And that is that personal brand, who you are.
You know what else too? If you can't feel confident selling yourself, it's you. You will know more about yourself than you will any product or any company. It's you. If you can't feel confident or comfortable selling yourself to get an opportunity, what makes you think you'll be confident enough to sell a company's product or service?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Really good point. That's another great one. Play that back. All right, listen, I want to bounce back again. I know I'm bouncing back a little bit and back and forth here, but I want to come back to the companies. I want to talk about the culture, right? Because you work with a lot of organizations, maybe not a ton of organizations, but I know culture plays a big part of it. But how do you identify a good culture? What separates companies that you can identify right away from a strong? Because listen, if you can identify it, a candidate's going to be able to identify it. But what are some of the things that you identify right away if somebody has a strong culture, or, we'll flip side it on the other side, or things that are probably make it more of a weaker culture?
Yeah. You need to talk to a handful of people to understand and learn the culture. You can't get it from one person. That's for sure. I mean, look at our company. We're a best place to work. We've been a best place to work in Boston for, I don't know, a decade. We've been best place to work. We actually by Inc. magazine, across the United States for 8 years or so. And what we do when we interview is we try to understand, we try to share what our core values are, and we try to understand and interview based on those core values, so that we're talking to people that share the same core values and can live those core values on a daily basis. And that really helps with culture and environment, because if we share the same core values as a company and as an employee or as a teammate, then you can live them on a daily basis. And if you have that same belief system, then you automatically adopt or absorb into the culture because it's so easy. If you have conflicting core values, it is really hard to make a good match. And ultimately what happens in a sales organization is an individual, and sometimes companies or leadership understands this and sometimes they don't. If an individual is negative or cancerous, it is likely not due to their productivity. They could be a top producer, or if they're a bottom producer or negative, then that's easy. You can coach them up, you can coach them out. But if they're a high productivity or high production individual with a negative, or they don't agree with your core values or is somewhat negative or cancerous to the environment, that actually hurts a lot more than their productivity helps. And so if you can't identify those core values and you can't identify if they're a good culture fit, then what ultimately ends up happening is management gets stuck and they save the person for productivity, but they degrade their culture and their environment, and it starts to fall apart.
Yeah, that's it. It starts disintegrating. So you got to identify it quick for sure. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But I think clarity is really one of the things you said here, was just identifying that clarity is most important. And I think sometimes companies, and listen, especially with growing companies, sometimes they start out smaller and they get bigger, and it's okay to have things change and put more focus in certain areas than others. But ultimately, I think you just have to have a heartbeat on it. I think that makes a big difference. Another question for you. Okay. Your ideal client. Listen, you work with small to medium-sized enterprise businesses, probably till I know larger ones as well. What strategies do you recommend for a smaller, medium-sized business that might not have the brand recognition that a larger firm does to attract top talent?
Yeah. So one is you need to have an outbound strategy. You do. Advertising alone, it's just not enough, David, right? You need to find the talent. That's number one. Number two, if you have a traditional mindset and you spend most of your time trying to qualify people out, then you'll do a great job of that. But what you should be doing is selling them in, getting them excited about the opportunity, understanding what the challenges or concerns are going to be from the candidate, right? Because a lot of times what happens is smaller corporations think they have the best technology and they're booming and they're having a lot of success, but they're struggling to find the right talent. And the reason why they struggle is they hold on so tight. They're spending so much time trying to, trip up sales professionals to figure out why they're not a great fit. And then they realize, wow, this person's really good. But by the time they identify that the candidate's really good, they're done. They're out the door. They've already decided that you're not the right company for them. You've already lost them, right? So you've got to sell them. Start by selling them, right?
Yeah. Well, it's
Get
a balance,
excited.
right? It's a balance, right? Because you don't want to seem too overzealous. Listen, I was in those points too, where I'm like, oh, we got to get a sales professional, right? And then there's that point where you got to grill them to make sure that they're a good fit. I wouldn't say grill them, but you got to ask the right questions to make sure that they're a good fit. That's a balance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you got to set the hook.
Yeah.
Like you've got to set the hook. Get them excited, feeling like they want it. The more they want it, the more they'll do in the interview process. The more they'll accept what your interview process looks like. Right?
Yeah.
If you make it painful for them, they'll just consider other options.
Yeah.
They'll and I know because when a candidate bounces and the client really loves them, like, oh, what happened? What did we do wrong? And we'll give them the exact feedback. And usually that's what it is. Now, you're still going to interview them and move them through the process, and you're still going to do a deeper dive into their background, but get them excited. Don't oversell the opportunity, but get them excited. Make sure they know why they're there and why they should consider this opportunity. Make them really want it. And then, of course, you can still, weed them out if they're the wrong individual, but just get them excited.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that to touch on is just the expectations in the process. I know you guys do a fantastic job on that, but making sure as a business that when you bring somebody through the interview process, you kind of map out the expectations of what's going on, because when there's uncertainty, that's when people, their minds can kind of go off into certain tangents and I guess how to interpret things maybe the wrong way. So expectations, I think, is probably one of the big ones as well.
Oh, you're dead on. Yeah, you think about this. You're a top producer. You're considering this new opportunity. You're learning more about the company. You're excited about the company now after your first or second interview, but the process is all messed up. And the first thing you start thinking, the feedback we get is this company's just too disorganized. They can't get out of their own way. I'm totally turned off. right? Well, you would be, right? I would be. We both would. We know. Like,
I,
you don't want to get
tell you this
tripped
from
up.
right. I tell you this from experience and going along through the years. Went from you know, probably a haphazard recruiting approach, more of a reactive recruiting approach to a proactive recruiting approach. And I think that's probably another good point to touch on. You know, don't hire when you need somebody. Be proactive in the way that you hire, not reactive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're so right. Give yourself some runway. No. And by the way, when you're interviewing like that, you have a finger on the pulse. Like if you were interviewing a year ago and now you're looking for salespeople now, you don't have a finger on the pulse. What you once knew then, the market's already changed. It's already been pulled from underneath you and things are moving. So you always want to be updated and understand what the market looks like, what the talent's doing, what's happening. Just be in the know so you're not caught flat-footed when a territory's open and now you're losing revenue for the next 3 months or quarter. Because once you lose that, you and I both know it's really hard to make up revenue once you've missed 3 months of it. So
Stop and go.
oh yeah.
That'll hurt you. All right, so now let's flip to the sales professional side. I know we talked a little bit about a person who's just getting into sales and maybe not a lot of experience, but let's talk about someone who's been in sales for a little while, maybe not a seasoned veteran, but doing well. What are some key indicators that it's time to maybe look for another growth opportunity, or because listen, there are people out there I talk to here and there where they're like, I'm just kind of stagnant, or I'm just not as challenged. Are there any indicators to look at that?
Yeah, I think, well, this would be my suggestion.
Okay.
You may agree or disagree, and maybe that's because of my opinion being in the industry.
Yeah,
You want a long runway. You want to be on you want to be on the offensive, not on the defensive. When you're in a defensive mode and things are going downhill or you're getting laid off, or something's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're in a rush. You're not making great decisions. You might pick the first thing that comes your way, and it's not a great career strategy, right? And you might get into a role and then decide 9 months later this job is no good either. So we always talk about having a long runway. The only way to have one of the ways to have a long runway is when we're talking to individuals, we are working with people for years, 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, what have you. We want to understand exactly what their background looks like, but more importantly, we want to understand what's next for them. What is the next move? What is the title? What is the role? What is the compensation? What's the industry? We want to know all of that. And as those opportunities come up, we call those people and let them know that we have a great opportunity for them that meets the requirements they gave us. So they're giving themselves a long runway. They're still busy working at their office. They're still, trying to hit their numbers. But anytime something great comes up, they just want to know about it. They just want to be educated. And that's one of our advantages with our clients. Yeah. They're just not in touch with this network of individuals. So they don't really know who's out there. And it's always a last minute post a job, see if we can find someone kind of thing. For us, with our candidates, they could be looking for 18 months. And when we find the right fit, which we will, we'll reach out, we'll call them, and we'll introduce the opportunity to them.
Yeah. That's so important. Again, I think it keeps coming back full circle to some of the things we're talking about. Be proactive. Don't be reactive in this stuff, because that's when bad decisions are made. When you're pressed up against it, you're looking for a job or you're looking for a candidate and you're just pressed for time, or you got to get a butt in the seat, and which is something we touched on the other day. I mean, no butt in the seat is better than the butt in the seat that's not producing. So, but at any rate, all right, let's talk about technology, from the sales professional side. Technology is changing a lot. And to stay up on the game, how important is it I'm probably answering the question already, but how important is it for sales professionals to stay up on technology and platforms for their career?
Oh, I mean, it's a must. Yeah. Whether it is, building sequences or drip campaigns or, LinkedIn. I mean, if you're not using technology, AI to drive, build your own content, If you're not using all of these tools, then you are at a tremendous disadvantage. And if you think to yourself, you know what, I just don't need any of that technology, that's fine. But you know that there are going to be stronger sales representatives that are coming after you and behind you that will change, that will adapt, that will learn how to use the technology to better themselves in your field. And the only way to be a top producer is to be up and comfortable with all the technology as it comes out. I mean, I know we do as a company, we're constantly trying new things because there's so many different options to, technology, especially sales tools that are really helpful when prospecting and finding new business.
Yeah, it's such a big one. And it's funny you said LinkedIn really quick. Here's a tip for everybody out there as a sales professional, whether you're looking for a career change or not, make sure that your LinkedIn is updated. Make sure that you don't have a picture of yourself at a wedding with a background that's all blurry, or just make sure that you're putting your best foot forward on LinkedIn, because it is ultimately where I would say 90% of people go in the business world when they get connected with somebody.
Oh man, that's a great recommendation. That is spot on. That is such a good recommendation. It is spot on, man.
We used to have our team members right away when they first came on. All right, first thing is, if they weren't already, update your LinkedIn with the new job and ultimately anything that needed to be updated, because sometimes it needs a refresher, but it's a big one for sure. All right, so now let's talk highest level, sales professional. I'm sure it's going to run along the same lines. And you answered some of this already. Looking for a new opportunity. You've been with the company 10 years, 12 years. They come to you. What's some of the first things that you dig into with a sales professional when they're looking to make a change?
If it's 10 or 12 years at the same company, it's always, why are they looking to leave?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? What's changing? That's number one. Number two is, when you've been at a company for 10 to 12 years or longer, it can be hard to pivot. So we're trying to leverage your strengths, meaning the industry that you're calling on, your competitors, things of that nature.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't completely change, because you can, but we would want to leverage maybe other industries or other technology that is selling to the same industry you're selling to. I guess the point is, we would have to really unravel your background to figure out what we're using as leverage to get your foot in the door with some competitors or competing industries, or how we're going to use the things that you've done and accomplished to go after, different segments of the market. That's number one. Number two, we're trying to figure out where you want to be in your career.
Yeah.
Do you want to see some growth? Are you a manager? Are you looking for management? Are you a VP and looking to be a CRO? Are you a CRO and looking to become a president or a CEO or a GM of the Americas? What are we trying to do? What's our strategy? And based on your background, what are we going to leverage to get your foot in the door? But the idea there is, we really need to figure out what you want to do next. Where are you going? And then once we identify where you're going, and then we can understand what we're going to use in your background to leverage our strengths to get your foot in the door with the companies and industries that you're targeting next.
Very good, man. Very good. I mean, that's a clear identifier right there. And you touched on something in that answer about, are you a manager? Are you a VP? Do you want to be a president? Talk to me about scaling up for professionals who maybe quite not have had a senior VP position or a president position or a CRO position. We talked about that a little bit last time. For people who don't have a lot of experience, but have shown a good track record in their sales profession, how do you help them leverage that, or how would you recommend they help leverage the opportunity to take it by the reins?
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at let's say we're looking at a VP for a mid-market company, or maybe even a larger size company. Mm-hmm. So if they're a VP and they want to be a CRO, we may suggest looking at a little bit smaller company.
Gotcha.
or the same size company. Like so what is our strategy? Let's look at a smaller company that could take a chance. Will you take a little bit of risk? Will you look at startups? Right? What kind of compensation do you need? Can you afford to do this? Can you take an larger equity package and a smaller cash package to make this move? Right? So we're trying to figure out how we make that transition and how we get you to the next level. Because if you're in a mid-market company, I can't get you into Oracle as a CRO. You just haven't had the experience. I need to understand what revenue. If you've taken a company from 20 million to 50 million, wonderful. It's really hard for me to get you into a $200 million company as a CRO when you're only a VP.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out all of the different aspects of your background and where we have the best shot to get your foot in the door if you are looking for a CRO position coming from a VP position.
Great.
If we want to get to a bigger company, we might actually have to look at a regional role. Right. It's got to be maybe a step back. So there's so many variables, and it's really dependent upon, what the person wants to do in their career. What's next?
Yeah, I think it's a big point, because sometimes you do have to take a step back in order to take a step forward. And you just I was speaking with a professional yesterday, and he was telling me how he had moved out to California, and he did just that. He took a step back because he had to learn about the processes and understand the role a little bit more and the types of tools they were using in order to move into a more of a leadership position. And I thought it was really interesting for him to say that. And he was talking more about his journey in doing that. And it was really hard at first, but now he's paid his dues, and he's at a point now where he's going to be getting promoted. So I think it's well worth it. But it took him a year and a half
I love
to
it.
get to that point.
Yeah, but you know what? I see that that's a great candidate. That's a great person to talk to.
Yeah.
That they're confident enough in their ability to go for it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you just need that strategy. You need to be thinking outside the box. Sometimes it's only about money. When you're earlier in your career, all you care about is making more money. It could be the worst company in the world, but many times you're just taking it because it's more money. It might be a bigger base salary, but you're not going to sell anything. And so you're not going to see the on-target earnings, but you just want the money. You know what I mean? And as you mature, you start looking for, not saying that everyone's like this, but many times you start to look for, organization culturally that's a good fit. The money will come in time, something that you can sustain and find great success at. So it's different. Everyone's different stages of their life, different industries, different career paths.
It's great. And listen, it leads me to the next question. And we can look at this from either side, either from the business side of the ownership or the company side, or we can look at this from the sales professional side. But can you provide tips for setting or negotiating sales job offers for the best possible terms? I'm going to let you roll with this one.
Yeah, I think I can tell you for both sides, from the company side and from the candidate side. The expectation should be set at the very onset of the process.
Okay.
This is the compensation range. Does this meet because that's what we do. What is your compensation requirement? Our client's compensation requirement is this. If it doesn't fit this range, why would we waste the time? If it's not enough, if it's off, why would we waste the time? And then someone says, "Oh, I have some flexibility. Let me understand what this role looks like." I guess my point is, for the company, set the expectation early and often, and for a candidate, same thing, early and often, so that as you're moving through the process, expectations are set. Right? As expectations are set, when you get to the final stages of the interview process, if you're the right person, everyone should be on the same page, and you should be pretty close to where you need to be to make this happen. If there are any curveballs and no one set that expectation, and it's not the logical progression to the interview process, now we have a problem, because now there's shock and awe, and a company makes an offer and the candidate's not prepared for the offer, And so now there's confusion and frustration. The candidate wants more and the company wants to pay less. And so then many times it falls apart. And it's because at the very beginning, no one set the expectation and they didn't have that conversation all the way through, so that at the very end, it was just the logical progression to the interview process was, well, we talked about the money. This is what it is. We'd like to make you this offer. Is this still, you mentioned this was, you're comfortable in this comp plan. Are you in agreement? Yes, I am. This sounds great. Perfect. We'll put it in writing, send it over to you. You can read through the details, sign on the dotted line, and get you started in a week, 2 weeks, whatever.
Check it off the box. There's some advice for you. Start from the plan. Start from the beginning with expectations. Again, that comes along with what we talked about earlier, was setting the agenda of how this process is going to work. But make sure that you are very clear on compensation plans and potential. And I know, especially sales positions, it can't, there can be a broad stroke based on performance, but ultimately I think that the tangibles need to be clarified there. So I think that's great advice. Great advice. So good. Listen, this has been great. A few more questions for you. I can't believe the time just flew. Dan, you are a true pro at this, man. And I really appreciate you being here. And I think anybody listening to this, whether they're professional or whether they're a business owner or recruiting, they're getting a lot out of this right now. But what advice do you have for sales professionals in managing job transitions successfully? How can, if someone is, all right, they're moved on to a new job, how do they manage that job transition successfully?
So they've just left one company and they're starting with the next company.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do it however you'd like, but one thing I would recommend for me personally, and again, many people may not want to go through this exercise.
Yeah.
But I would create a 30, 60, 90-day plan based on everything you've learned. And this is just for your success. This doesn't mean that you have to have your management team look at it or whatever, but create a 30, 60, 90-day plan as to what you're going to do in that first 30, 60, and 90 days. What is going to make you successful? And then if I were to make a suggestion, I would run it past my new manager and make sure that they're in agreement that my plan will lead me to success in the first, 90 days, right? And hold yourself accountable, right? Get a leg up on the competition. Have a plan before you walk in the door. Why show up confused? Have a plan. Be ready to go. Day one, when you walk in, you've already created the plan that your new manager's agreed to. It's giving you direction and it's giving you a playbook as to how to be successful. I would invest the time before I started to write down my process and plan so that you can show and be the most successful in your new career as possible.
Actually, I'm going to take it a step further with you, man. And I think you brought up a huge point here. Take it a step further. In the interview process, one of the things I always recommend anybody who I'm working with in the sales profession who may be asking me for advice is there's a question they should ask the employer. What type of results do I need to produce in the first 90 days for you to make you feel like you made a great investment in me? And I think it really goes along the same lines of what you're talking about. Putting together a 30, 60, 90 day. I like the 30, 60, 90 day plan even better because you're breaking down into different segments. But what a great gem right there. Understand. And again, it all comes back to what we're talking about. Expectations, right? Getting a new job. What are the expectations? Hiring somebody. What are the expectations? We're looking for a company for you. We're looking for a recruit for you. What are the expectations? I think expectations just keep coming up in this conversation, and I love it, man.
Yeah.
It really is great. So, all right, listen, I want to thank, this has been a fantastic show, and I want to thank you for being here. And more importantly, where can people find you? If they have questions for you, they want to hook up with you, they're looking for talent, or they're looking for another opportunity, Dan, where can they find you?
Well, our website is Treeline Inc. That's INC. So treelineinc.com. Click on the contact us form, fill it out, and ask for Dan Fantasia, and I'll reach out to you. Or go to LinkedIn. My URL is Dan Fantasia. Look me up, send me a message. I will respond absolutely right away. So connect with me anytime you want. Connect with me, follow me, message me, anything you want. I'm here.
Yeah, this guy knows his stuff, and his team behind him is fantastic. And he has one of the top recruiting firms in the country. And you got that award recently, right? The Inc. Award.
The best places to work.
Yeah, best
We
place
just
to work.
I think they're launching it in June. They're going public in June. We just found out yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think we're 9 years or something on that list. It's great.
That's fantastic, man. Congratulations on that. And listen, everybody, like the show, share the show. We appreciate your support, and we will see you next time. And keep going on, everybody. Keep fighting that good fight. And we'll see you next time. Appreciate it. Thanks again, Dan.